This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to look at the HP NV15. This is the late 2011 or early 2012, since it shipped really late in 2011, version of the NV15. They last made one starting in 2009, then they switched to a 14 and 17-inch model. We're really glad the 15.6-inch model is back, and this is a really killer notebook for $12.99. This is the HP NV15. This came out in very late 2011, December or so really, and probably not shipping in big volume until January of 2012 actually. And this is the second generation NV15. HP first made one in 2009 that we reviewed. We'll compare them in a minute. And then they switched off to making the 14-inch version instead and the 17-inch, and we really missed the 15.6-inch because that's kind of the sweet spot of portability but still having a lot of power. So you have a 15.6-inch display, and this is what HP calls their Radiance 1080p display. That means it's an IPS display, glass front here, and it's fairly bright. It's about 250 nits. I think HP might claim 300 nits. It's pretty bright. Plenty of glare. It's a glossy display, but really nice contrast, very good colors. Yes, you've heard on some forums maybe that the reds aren't as deep as they could be. They do veer a little bit towards the orange, but not really much on our model. In fact, I've compared this to my Apple 30-inch Cinema display, which is one of the best displays in terms of color gamut. It's only slightly different, so. And it's a real step up from something like the Samsung Series 7 Chronos display that we looked at recently, 15.6-inch matte display there, but that's just a TN panel, and you don't get the viewing angles, you don't get the contrast and the color saturation. So really, it's a lovely display. The first thing I had said when I turned it on is, nice display, and I kept saying that until everybody around me got bored. So looking around, we have a 15-inch notebook that weighs 5.8 pounds. That's a little bit heavier than the MacBook Pro 15-inch. That's 5.6 pounds. And certainly is heavier than the 5.05 pound Samsung Series 7 Chronos 15.6-inch. Still, that's a very portable computer, and it's a great improvement over the original Envy, because this one manages to fit an internal optical drive. You've got a DVD burner inside, and a full set of ports. The original Envy was pretty port deprived. It didn't have room for the internal optical drive, and yeah, it had a removable battery. This one doesn't so much. A removable battery, we'll show you what we mean by that in a minute, but it only ran for about 2 hours on a charge, so HP included a big old slate slab lithium-ion battery that clipped onto the bottom, making it highly unportable. So while the Envy 2009 edition was ahead of its time in terms of performance, and it's still really a good performer, this one is everything you hoped it would be. Everything is built inside. It's much more portable. Battery life is pretty good. Around 5 to 5.5 hours if you're using Intel HD integrated graphics on it. Speaking of graphics, this also has dedicated graphics, as you'd expect from an Envy. It's a good gaming machine, in fact a very good gaming machine. It has AMD Radeon HD 7690M graphics. Now that's a new GPU. The 7000 series just came out in terms of mobile GPUs. And the 7000 series isn't really a huge leap forward. It's more like a marketing change in terms of version numbers. But I would say this is certainly roughly equivalent to the 6770 of last-gen graphics, if not a little bit better. And it's comparable to the NVIDIA GT555M in terms of graphics, which puts it up there, it says, towards the high end of your mid-range graphics, and certainly at the highest end for a 15-inch machine. This can easily play older games like Fear 2 at highest possible settings, maintaining good FIPS. It can play Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 at high settings very well, and it can even play Skyrim at medium settings nicely. So you've definitely got a good portable gaming machine here. Other neat features include the Beats Audio. HP's been using that for a while, and it used to be Beats Audio was kind of quiet. This is finally loud, well, in part because it has 6 speakers, so you get 5.1 audio. That's a lot of speakers. You've got 2 stereo speakers, one on each side here. You've got speakers on the front row, 4 total, 2 here, 2 here, and then you've got a subwoofer on the bottom. And you've got your Beats Audio with an analog control here. If you press the little button, it brings up the Beats Audio control panel here, and you can switch to a variety of settings for music, movies, that kind of thing, and control your EQ. Works pretty well, actually, if you just use the presets for music and movies. And this is an analog dial over here, so you can rotate this to change the volume. And it's not ultra micro sensitive, which is good. If you touch it just a little bit, it's not going to be blaringly loud suddenly or terribly quiet. So you get a good amount of turning. And you can actually set which way makes it louder or quieter in the control panel too, in terms of rotation. You've got your mute button here, and that lights up if you turn it on, which is a good thing, so you're not wondering where the heck did the sound go. And your wireless button, likewise, is always lit up here so you can see your wireless status. Now for this $12.99 configuration, besides the 1080p Radiance display, you get an Intel Core i7 CPU. That's a 2670QM processor, 4 cores, 8 threads, and that runs at 2.2 gigahertz with turbo boost to 3.1. So that's the same CPU used in the Samsung Series 7 Chronos that we looked at again. And it's a very capable and fast CPU, benchmarks very well. It has 6 megs of level 2 cache, by the way. And we've got 8 gigs of DDR3 RAM in here. You can actually access the RAM by opening up the bottom of the computer. It's not all that hard to do. 8 gigs is not the maximum, 16 is, which is a nice touch. There are a variety of configurations available. HP actually sells one with a 1366 by 768 display if you want to save money. I'm not so sure I would recommend that. And you can get it with less RAM, and you can even get it with a Core i5 if you want. We've got the HP TrueVision webcam up here. It actually works pretty well. We tested it with Skype, and with fairly poor indoor lighting, it did a pretty good job. Just avoid being backlit, because then you'll look pretty dark. You've got a backlit keyboard here, speaking of backlighting, and there's an LED under every key here, so it's very nice and even. I kind of wish it was more like the Samsung Chronos, though, because that has a little ring of light around every key, too, which looks cool and makes it even easier to find. Also, with the Chronos, you get backlight up and down keys, just like on the MacBook Pro. With this one, you have backlight on and off button right here. Turns it on, turns it off. And if you want to control the level of backlight, you have low, medium, or high, you hold down the backlight button and use the arrow keys to bring the backlighting up and down. So you have to remember to do that. Likewise, if you want to turn the Beats audio on and off, I really don't know why you would want to turn it off. You hold down FN and hit the B button for Beats to turn it on and off. We've got a large trackpad here, buttonless. You know, HP loves those. This is made by Synaptics, and a couple of years ago, HP touchpads were honestly just a horror. This one is definitely an improvement. I like the texture. It's a little bit rough, so you've got some traction here. And multi-touch gestures work pretty well, and dragging and dropping are no longer difficult to do. It's a pretty decent trackpad. If you need to turn it off, you just double tap over here by this little symbol, and then the light will light up to tell you that you've turned it off. So no complaints really, other than the buttons here. They call it buttonless, but the whole trackpad does move and click. They're a little stiff to press. The keyboard is decent. I prefer the Chronos. Again, there you get the number pad on the Chronos, which is neat, but the only trouble there is that they also thus offset you and have to offset the trackpad to the left to accommodate that. But this one, the keys have a little bit of springiness, and you can hear them rattling just a little bit. You know what I mean? That kind of springy thing going on there. It's not that like the keys have all that much travel, and I'm surprised about that. It's not a terrible keyboard, but it's not the best I've ever used. Certainly it's plenty roomy, and you've got plenty of dedicated buttons up here too to control things like your display brightness, switching which displays you're running on, media controls, optical drive eject, that kind of stuff. You got a little arrow pad right over here, and your page up and down buttons are on the far edge. Fairly standard layout for a 15-inch notebook. Let's take a look around at the ports. Here we're looking at the right side of the machine, so some of these things might get in the way for your right-handed people who are using an external mouse, but you've got your gigabit Ethernet port right here. This is the side of the Beats rotary controller for volume. Here's your power port. Full-size HDMI, full-size display port. You can drive both of those at the same time, and the AMD graphics handles that pretty well. You can span across several monitors if you want. One USB 2.0 port here, your lock slot, SD MMC card slot, power and hard drive access indicators over here. Slot loading optical drive right here, DVD burner 8X. We have two USB 3.0 ports. This one's a sleep and charge port, and two headphone jacks, or you can use it as a headphone and mic jack if you want to. Here on the front edge there's a teeny little lip that makes it easier to open the display. Stiff display hinge, by the way, and this also tilts pretty far back, unlike the original Envy that really didn't go back very far. And we've got speaker grills here, two speakers here, total of 6 speakers, a subwoofer on the bottom, so you've got the 2 right back by the display, these 4, and the subwoofer, so you get 5.1 audio, I guess, and then some, since you've actually got 7 speakers, technically speaking. So here, you can slide up that bottom panel, and we've done that, and you can see, here's the battery right here. It's an 8-cell battery. That is 4750 milliamps per hour, and this is your hard drive right here, so you can just unscrew it and swap out the hard drive if you want, and your Windows product key is actually on this piece of cover right here. And you can see what I assume would be the 2 subwoofers. Now there are 6 teeny Phillips head screws here. If you unscrew those, you can access the memory and other internals of the computer as well. So for a sort of sealed inside battery design, this is actually very easy to access, and HP does a very good job with making these things easy to service. And obviously, even the battery is fairly easy to get to, but HP says, well, you're going to avoid your warranty if you swap it out yourself. But we leave that up to you 2-3 years from now when your battery's dead. Do you care about that? Probably not so much. Bottom panel is metal. You can hear the sound of metal right there. The whole thing is made of aluminum, and there's a magnesium alloy frame too, so it's typical high-end Envy stuff. So we're taking a look at the lid from the back side, and you can see these are the hinges right here. Lots of vents going on here, and this is a aluminum top. They call this a Nero black color. It's a matte black finish. Unfortunately, it does show some fingerprints though. Cleans up pretty easily with a damp towel, but yes, it does indeed. All metal all around here. Typical high-end Envy stuff. Really nice construction, pretty well put together. I can see some places where some corners, like right over here, are not perfectly aligned though, but overall it's pretty good. And the overall size and shape, well, they're pretty much like the original Envy. The original Envy had a very different lid. Here we have it right here. You can see they're about the same size, but this one had that interesting etched finish here, which I know a lot of guys didn't seem to like so much. I think women liked it a little bit better. It is amazing, though, how much more stuff they did manage to fit in here, though, because you can see they're the same size, but we've got that internal optical drive and bigger battery inside, all that kind of thing. That's how technology moves forward from 2009 to the present day. So overall, a very nice-looking machine, very well put together, plenty of metal, good solid quality. Now let's compare it to the 15.6-inch MacBook Pro. See, MacBook Pro is thinner. This is about 1.1 inches, the Envy. So not super thin. Of course, as 15-inch notebooks go, that is pretty skinny, but among the slim models, not super skinny. But anyway, there's a comparison of the footprint. It is about the same. And if you look at the keyboard deck here, you can see a striking similarity to, well, this keyboard deck here. The Envy actually has the red ring around the keyboard that makes it look a little bit different, and a more abrupt edge where the MacBook Pro tapers. This is a pretty hard edge, although it hasn't really bugged me too much yet when typing. And now we'll compare it to the Samsung Series 7 Chronos 15.6-inch. About the same footprint. The Samsung is a teeny bit smaller and it is thinner and different design aesthetic. Both are using metal. Here we got the aluminum lid on the top, but this is very minimalist, very Euro. Sort of, I think of the Envy as the Corvette, and maybe this is something like the Audi TT. You know, it's got that Euro chic thing going on, a little bit understated, and this is just about all raw power. The Envy does very well on benchmarks when running on dedicated graphics. We got 10,208 on PC Mark Vantage. That's about 25% better than the Chronos Series 7 Samsung, by the way. And is scored 10,355 in 3D Mark 06, which is a good improvement over the 7,300 that we got for the original 2009 NV15. The Envy has switchable graphics, as we mentioned, Intel HD 3000 integrated graphics, which are actually very capable for things like movie video playback. If you're watching Netflix or playing a DVD, that's really more than adequate. And even for light Photoshop use, for those of you who aren't really picky about your OpenGL acceleration, you do get OpenGL acceleration with Photoshop for the Intel HD 3000 graphics, but obviously you're going to get more performance with a dedicated GPU. And the dedicated graphics, again, are the AMD Radeon HD 7690M graphics with 1 gig of DDR5 RAM. Very good performer there. And this uses the AMD Catalyst control panel, which, well, it hasn't been notebook owners' favorites thing. They're a little bit behind in video when it comes to graphics switching. So HP has gone ahead and actually given you a BIOS setting. You can boot into the BIOS, hit the escape key when the machine is starting up, and you can choose to override the AMD switchable graphics and manage it yourself. And that way you can either turn it on or off when you please, or you can have it always run with dedicated graphics when the machine is plugged in and Intel graphics when it's unplugged. And I'll show you what I mean here. We have enabled the manual switching. So we have the configure switchable graphics right here. And right now you can see we're using Intel, or what it calls the power-saving GPU, and we can switch as we see fit. Now it's going to make you close all applications before you do that, so anything that's running you got to kill, but it's still nice to do. And it's telling me that I need to close my apps. It will do the old-fashioned blanking of the screen, but that's okay by me because I like having that added control. Otherwise, when you look at Switchable Graphics, there's a little selector box where you can add applications. It will try to determine automatically if you need to have dedicated graphics turned on. For example, if you run a DirectX game, it usually figures it out and switches to dedicated graphics, but not always. And particularly for Adobe apps, it does not. Even if you add Adobe Photoshop CS5 to the list or one of their video editing apps, it's going to stay on Intel graphics. But now that we've manually set it to be on dedicated graphics, we'll show you Photoshop and how it recognizes the Radeon GPU. So here we are in Photoshop CS5, and we'll take a look at our performance settings. And you can see OpenGL drawing is on and it's recognized as being the ATI, well, actually owned by AMD now, but Radeon graphics right here. And there's your settings. So for those of you who really want to be able to use your dedicated GPU in your Adobe apps, well, this is a good choice because HP does provide that selection in BIOS. A lot of notebook manufacturers still don't, who are using the AMD dedicated graphics with switchable Intel, so you're going to have to rely otherwise on the software actually listening to you, and, well, it doesn't always. Now, if you leave graphics settings to just be fully automatic and don't go into BIOS and turn on the manual switching, by the way, it switches very seamlessly. Sometimes you'll see just the barest hint of a little bit of switching or blanking in the screen, but you won't see that turning to black business. So that's one nice thing about that. And for those of you who don't really know, don't want to have to manage, you can just leave it with the default automatic switching. In terms of performance, obviously this is a full Core i7 with dedicated graphics, 8 gigs of RAM, a 750 gigs, 7200 RPM hard drive, by the way, in this configuration. You can get SSDs if you want. It's capable of doing anything you need. If you need to do Photoshop, if you need to work with Premiere, if you want to do video editing, no problem, CAD work, clearly. So we're not going to go through a whole lot of really obvious things here and run a bunch of apps. You know that it's pretty good. But we'll show you a couple of fun things like Netflix, for example. So here we are on the Netflix website, and I know there's been some conversation about how red the reds are. And you know, Netflix has a kind of warmish, orangey red, but it looks pretty much like the appropriate Netflix color. It's maybe not be as deep a red, as cool a red as it could be, but it's fine by me. Anyway, we're going to check out a movie now. And we're using Intel HD graphics to play this, because that's more than good enough. So we are streaming from Netflix.
That first name.
You can hear the audio. We're playing in movie mode right now.
I don't need a doctor. Damn it, I am a doctor.
You need to get back to your seat.
I had one in the bathroom with no windows. I suffer from athiophobia. It means fear of dying.
Sir, for your own safety, sit down, or else I'll make you sit down.
I'm half volume right now. So it certainly looks great.
Thank you.
This is Captain Piper. Clear for takeoff.
Next, we'll check out YouTube.
Hundreds of them.
You're on YouTube?
Got German monkey. Let's get them. Where are the damn fighters going? Is there anything left of our escort?
We've got the 720p.
Hey, prepare to bail out.
Absolutely awesome looking.
Our boys are getting cut to shreds.
I need pilots who will put the bombers ahead of...
Works good. So even after playing a couple of videos, you can hear the fan really hasn't kicked up. The fan runs all the time. It's not terribly loud. Way, way, way quieter than the original Envy from 2009. And if you're playing games, it'll kick up. It's not going to override certainly the track on your game, your audio track. But the machine stays cool, which is pretty impressive for the aggressive fan settings that HP likes to use. And it does have that cool sense, by the way, so it senses if you're moving it around or it's on your lap. It keeps the machine running at about, the cores are about 33 centigrade or so when it's not working too hard, you're web browsing, working on Office. If you're doing some pretty serious 3D gaming, the cores will go up to about 56 or 57 centigrade, which is actually pretty low. It doesn't get hot here. There's a little bit of warmth in this section here, but just a little bit of warmth, not hot at all. And the center bottom, directly under here, it can get warm but not blazingly hot. So, good job of cooling. Machine runs for around 5 to 5.5 hours if you're using Intel integrated graphics, and that's pretty good. Say you're just doing everyday office things, web browsing, email, that kind of stuff. If you're going to be streaming videos or playing DVDs, well, DVDs actually won't drop it that much, about 4 3/4 hours, maybe even 5. If you switch to dedicated graphics, you're looking at about 3.5 hours of runtime, which is actually pretty good for dedicated graphics. So definitely a usable machine on the road. Not ultra long battery life, but for a machine that has all the power of a 17-inch in a 15-inch frame, very good. And of course, because this is an Envy, we've got to do a gaming video, and then we're going to have a separate video just for that, and we'll show you 3 top games running on this, and you can see how well they do for yourself, but here's the spoiler, it does very well. So that's the HP NV15, late 2011, early 2012 model. It's available now. Again, this is the $12.99 version, which is pretty much the version you're going to see in stores or as a quick ship model. You get the 1080p Radiance IPS display, Core i7 CPU running at 2.2 gigahertz, a 750 gig hard drive running at 7200 RPMs, 8 gigs of RAM, and dedicated graphics that are switchable with Intel graphics. Is the NV15 a nice machine for the price? Definitely, yes it is. Nice backlit keyboard, good display, awesome performance, and reasonably portable also. And happily now we have the internal optical drive and all those goodies, so those of you who are thinking about upgrading from your original Envy, well, that's really attractive right there, along with the improved battery life. It's well made, it's got a nice metal casing. Definitely one of our favorite notebooks in the 15-inch thin and light portable and performance category, which isn't a very crowded category, I'll grant you that, but still, good machine. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Visit our website for the full review, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.